What's up guys, XYZ here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we are taking a look at zombies. This deck just got more support in Dimension Force, and I feel like every time zombies get new support, they just get a little bit of new tools to play with, and the strategy, well, ever since the structure deck came out, it has kind of been the same. It just feels like it's getting more and more to work with every time we get new cards, and because we know how much people love this deck, and Konami knows this as well, they're just gonna keep printing more cards every so often, so we can expect this deck to be really good, and because of the synergy this deck has with Zombie World, it gives it a really good matchup against a lot of the current meta decks, which we'll talk about once we get to the profile. So before we begin, if you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So starting off with the monsters, we have 3 copies of Unizombie. This is the best normal summon of the deck. It gives you a mill from the deck, it gives you a discard from the hand, it manipulates levels so you can go into all kinds of different synchro plays. It's an amazing card overall. We have 2 copies of Shiranui Solitaire. Now the reason I'm not maxing this out is because you don't want to break on too many normal summons, and I think for a 40 card deck, the golden ratio for normal summons you can play is the number 5. When you have 5 normal summons in a 40 card deck, that's the ratio you need to play in order to make sure that you don't break on too many of them, but you have a lot of good chances of seeing one of them. And the deck does have some drop power right now, which is something that is kind of new for the deck, which we didn't really do before, because the pot cards are not exactly cards that you want to play in this deck. Either of all 3, they don't really do much, but now we have a card that helps us basically play a draw card now. So 5 normal summons, I think it's perfectly fine. Solitaire attributes itself to get you either to your Unizombie or your Glob Bloom. Speaking of which, we have 2 copies of Glob Bloom. This is an amazing card. You banish it, you search a level 5 or higher zombie. If Zombie World's on the field, you special summon it itself. Self-explanatory. 2 copies of Necroworld Banshee. This card gives you access to your Zombie World whenever you want. You can send her to the grave with your Unizombie or any other means. You banish her, you get to a Zombie World onto the field. 2 copies of Doomking Ballardrock. This is the boss monster of the deck. Now that we have a lot of synchro monsters, it seems like this deck does not rely fully on this card, but it has other ways of closing out games. But this card is still the main disruptor of the deck because it's 2 interruptions in one. Basically, you can negate the effect of a zombie monster, or when the effect of a zombie monster is activated, you can banish a monster on the field or in the graveyard. With Zombie World, this card becomes a menace. Your opponent does not know how to deal with very easily, just because of how good this card is at being able to be unpredictable, because they don't really know that when they use the effect, which effect you're going to use, so they have to kind of guess and force you to use a certain effect, which is why this card can be really good. It gives you a lot of value with just 1 card. We play 2 copies of Mizuki. Now 3 can be a little bit cloggy. You can argue that 3 is correct, but the thing is, this card doesn't give you something that the deck absolutely needs, because it does have ways of sticking monsters to the field regardless. It's more of a backup play, but it's not a bad card to play at 2. You can try it at 1, you can try it at 3, but I feel like 2 has been working perfectly for me just because of how this card works. It's not a card that you're going to use more than 2 times in a single turn, so you don't really need to play more than 2, and once you've used its effect, it's okay that you don't have it in the graveyard anymore, because again, the deck does have a lot of recursion of itself, with effects like Ballardrock keep coming back every standby phase as long as there's a field spell on the field. So it's not like this card is super necessary, but it's a niche card you can play in the deck in order to get more monsters on the field, help you go into synchro plays or into link plays. It's not necessary, but it's a really good card. Now let's get into some of the new cards. First of all, we have 2 copies of Al Ghul Mazera. Now this card is a protective hand drop of sorts. So what this card does is that if a zombie monster you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard instead. And when this card is banished from your hand or graveyard, you can special summon it in defense and you can reduce its level by 1. So what this card does is that it protects you not only from Ghost Ogre, because Ghost Ogre is going to be super relevant next format because the adventure packets did not get hit at all, so people are still gonna play Ghost Ogre to try and counter Fateful Adventure. So Ghost Ogre on Unizombie can hurt just because you don't get its full value. You want to send both from deck and from hand in order to make sure that your plays go off as efficiently as possible, so being able to protect yourself from cards like Ghost Ogre makes this card really good. On top of that, Branded is going to be the most potent deck in the next format, 100%. I don't think anyone can argue with that. So we have to find a way to play around Guardian Chimera, because Guardian Chimera is really strong with Branded Fusion, and Branded in red being able to get to that with 1 single card and get all the other effects. So we need to protect our cards from a card like this. So Mazera helps you keep a monster on the field, because this deck can sometimes be normal summon reliant, especially for Unizombie being so powerful. So being able to protect Unizombie from Guardian Chimera and giving us an extra body on the field in the process means that we can get more cards on the field. And the fact that you can reduce this card's level to 7 from 8 means that even if your Unizombie for some reason gets negated even that afterwards, you can still go into Baron de Floor to make more plays like that. So this card gives you a perfect body on the field with a level of 8 or 7, which will give you access to either level 10 or level 11 synchro plays, and will also protect your cards. Next up, we have 1 copy of Jiangxi Spiridao. Now this card is the reason we can play a draw card in the deck right now, because this card basically gives gives Allure of Darkness a purpose in zombies, because before Allure was kind of a weird card. Again, it was very similar to the pot cards. It was a card that you could kind of play, but it didn't really give your strategy that big of a boost, because you don't really want to banish your zombies, you want to send them to the graveyard. But this card is a searchable card. You can search her with Bloom because she's level 6, and when she's banished, you can basically banish a zombie from your graveyard and special summon her. And once she's on the field, you can send a zombie from your hand or deck to the graveyard. So what you want to do with this card is you want to search it with Bloom, and then when you have a Allure of Darkness in your hand, of course, and then use Allure, you're going to draw 2 cards, banish her, banish another zombie from the grave, get her back on the field, and she's going to send to the graveyard the monster you were going to search with Bloom, most likely Barlel, so you can then bring it back with Zombie World. So it gives you an extra body on the field, it gives you a searchable, really good Allure target that also extends your plays even further, so you can dig for more power cards because the deck does play some of them, and also gives you an Armageddonite effect on top of that. So this card is absolutely amazing. You don't need to play more than one just because of the ability of this card to basically keep recurring itself. There are other ways to banish it from the graveyard as well, so it's not like you rely too much on Allure. And this card also has insane synergy with Mazera, because if you have a Mazera in the graveyard and then you use this effect, you are going to banish the Mazera from the grave, you're going to get Spirit Down on the field, and because Mazera got banished as well, it's going to get himself on the field as well, so you get 2 monsters for the price of 1 on top of a Foolish Burial effect. So these 2 cards work perfect in tandem. We play 1 copy of Gozuki. This card you played mostly for its grave effect. You want to be sending into the graveyard when you want to extend it to another monster of your hand, but it can also work as a normal summon, so even if you don't draw Unizombie, or if you don't draw Solitaire sometime and you have this card in your hand, it can act as a normal summon, because again, it's a Foolish Burial when it's on the field. But again, most of the times you just want to use the effect in the graveyard to banish another zombie, to special summon a zombie from the hand. We play 1 copy of Jacobola. Now, this is a card that's another searchable way to deal with a lot of decks, because when you combine this card with Zombie World, it can become a really good interruption, because during your opponent's main phase, you can target a zombie in either graveyard to special summon it on the field and banish this card until the end phase, so you can basically, with Zombie World on the field, steal any monster from your opponent's graveyard. So against back row reliant decks, this card can be really, really good, and can also disrupt plays like Branded in Rare when your opponent tries to activate during the main phase. If you chain this to steal the monster that they're trying to target in the graveyard, basically you negate Branded in total. And this card is very easy to summon. You can discard a zombie from your hand to special summon it, so it's not a card that will break your hands. You can get into the field whenever you want. We play 1 copy of Plague Spreader Zombie. Now, these next 2 cards are the cards that you're going to be summoning from your deck with Needle Fiber, and this card is a pretty standard zombie card. It basically gives you a level 3 tuner twice to get to more plays, and since it's level 2, it has a lot of synergy with cards like Spirit Dao, so you can get into level 8 synchros, and we did get some new synchro monsters as well, so this is going to be much more relevant than it used to be, just because we have better monsters to go into. And to go with that, we play 1 copy of Matt Moller. This is kind of a new version of Plague Spreader, so what this card does is that if it's in the graveyard, it's treated as Plague Spreader, and also you can target a level 6 or higher monster you control, you reduce its level by 2, and you special summon this card, and it locks you into zombies. So basically, you don't really care that it locks you into zombies that much, because you have good zombie monsters to go into now, and also this card doesn't neg you from your hand to bring back like Plague Spreader does, it just reduces the levels. So not only does it manipulate levels, but it also comes back for free. So these 2 monsters you're going to be summoning off with Fiber, you're going to use them either for Link or Exceed material, or Synchro material, sorry. When you summon them with Fiber, then you're going to bring them back, and you're going to use them again. So yeah, these cards give you really good value in this deck. For the hand drops, first of all, it has 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Of course, Ash is the most generic hand drop you can play. It stops Branded Fusion, it stops a lot of cards, and we also play 3 copies of Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. Now, the reason we're playing these 2 specifically is not only because they are good in general. I mean, obviously they are. Even Ghost Bell can stop cards like Water Enchantress and can stop Branded in Red. But the thing is, these 2 hand drops are zombies. So when you activate them from your hand, you're going to trigger Doom King's effect to basically banish a monster. So this is why these hand traps can be more devastating in this particular deck than in any other deck, just because you can combo them with another card to basically make them double disruption. So this is why playing the zombie hand traps in the zombies actually makes more sense, unironically. Now let's get to the spell cards. First, we have 3 copies of Zombie World, and this card right here is why this deck has an insane matchups against some of the most threatening decks in the format right now, specifically Sword Soul and Flunderies. Everyone knows that Zombie World is a killer for Flunderies. They cannot tribute some of their monsters, they cannot do basically anything, but it's really good against Sword Soul as well, because cards like Chizao require Wyrms in order to synchro summon, and this card turns everything on the field and in the graveyard into zombies. So the best thing they can do while this is on the field is make Baron de Flor if they have hard draw on the long one. So this card can basically hinder Sword Soul plays very much as well, on top of destroying completely Flunderies. And yeah, when you're playing against these decks, you're going to feel like you have a free ride, especially when you're going first. It's going to be super easy, and there are other ways to deal with the other decks like Branded in the deck as well. And one of those ways is the 3 copies of Super Poly. Now, Super Poly is really good with Zombie World because there is a generic zombie fusion monster you can make with 2 zombie monsters, but Super Poly, even if you don't have Zombie World, in this format it's great just because of Branded being so popular. Playing cards like Starving Venom or Dragostapelia means that you're going to be able to resolve Super Poly even without Zombie World, because in previous formats this deck kept playing Zombie World, but when it didn't have kept playing Super Poly with Zombie World, but when it didn't have Zombie World on the field, then sometimes it was kind of awkward drawing Super Poly because the decks did not really have any good materials for generic fusion monsters. But this format, it's very different. Super Poly is being played in a lot of other decks as well, and yes, you can make a lot of really good monsters and basically disrupt your opponent's plays going first, also, or destroy their boards going second. We play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. Now, this is a new addition in Zombies. Before, this card was not really great. You didn't really want to banish cards like Bloom, Banshee, Balrog from your hand. The only scenario where this card would be great is if you had multiple copies of cards you didn't really want in your hand and try to dig into something new. But now, because we have a searchable target for this card that also gives you more value on top of being just draw power, that being Jiangxi Spiridao, means that this card can not only draw you powerhouse cards like Super Poly, but also advance your game state by giving you extra monsters on the field, and Spiridao's Foolish Burial effect means that the card you would have searched with Bloom in the first place, you're going to get to access to regardless, so it's not like you basically went out of your way to make Allure live, you're going to end on the same, if not a more powerful board than before. So I feel like this card will start seeing more playing Zombies just because of Spiridao. It's an amazing card, and because we do have some unsearchable cards like Zombie War, like Rivalry, not Zombie War, like Super Poly, like Rivalry, which basically get you to a free win, because we all know how notorious the Rivalry Zombie World combo is, so having draw power for this combo makes the deck more potent as well. And for the one-offs, we play 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Of course, this is Zombies, we need to be able to play Foolish to get more monsters in the grave, and 1 copy of 1/1 to get access to a Bloom from our deck, because sometimes you want to send other monsters, or you will get stopped because some hand traps can kill this deck, because Veiler and Imperm are the most dangerous hand traps to put against this deck, just because it negates the entirety of Unizombies' effect. Otherwise, if it just get asked, then you can just send another monster from your hand. But yeah, this card is really good because not only will it get you Bloom to the field, but will get you one of the zombies in your hand to the graveyard, so it basically does the same thing as Unizombie does in a way. And the only trap we play in the deck is 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. Now, this is another card that it has seen a lot of play in the deck just because of the synergy it has with Zombie World. But the thing is, against Branded, this card on its own, it's really good too. So, similar to Super Poly, you're not relying fully on Zombie World to resolve those power cards. They can be really good against the meta on their own, and of course, if you combine them with Zombie World, they become devastating. So this card, being able to dig it with your Allure of Darkness makes it much more consistent and much more powerful as well. So yes, we're going to play it because this, with Zombie World, can get you free wins against pretty much any matchup that is not Eldritch. Now, let's get to the extra deck. Now we have some new synchro monsters first. First is the 1 copy of Immortal Dragon. Now, this is the level 6 monster that we got, and it says that during your main phase, you can send a zombie from your deck to the grave, and then this card level becomes the difference, the original devils of that monster and this card. So we have yet another Foolish Burial from our deck, which makes the deck better than ever before, just because we can get into synchros on the field, but these synchros also advance our game state as well, and then we can use those synchros to make even better synchros, because this card is a tuner. So not only can we get more cards in the graveyard, but we can also get more powerful monsters on the field. Also, this card, if a zombie monster is destroyed by a battle while it's in the graveyard, you can special summon it, and then it's going to get banished when it leaves the field. Another one is 1 copy of Skeletal Dragon Felgran. Now, this is the level 8 synchro monster, and if it's special summoned, you can target a monster your opponent controls or in the graveyard and you banish it. And keep in mind, this card says special summon, not synchro summon, so if this card is in your graveyard, you can either get it to the grave by basically its own effect, or with effects like Unizombie being able to send Mizuki, and then you can get it back from the graveyard to get even more banishes. And it has another effect that if a monster is special summoned from either graveyard while this monster is on the field, you can target one other face-up monster on the field and you negate its effect. So it also has negation on top of having a banish effect. So this card, you want to stick it to the field, and being able to revive it with Mizuki means that you're going to be able to use both of these effects a lot of the times throughout a duel, which makes this card really, really scary. And for the level 10 new synchro monster we got 1 copy of Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord. Now, this card says that during your opponent's turn, you can target a zombie in your graveyard, and then you special summon it. So this is another way to bring back Felgran to use its disruption effect. And also, if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish a zombie you control, you special summon this card. But with cards like Mazera and Spiridao, this banishing effect is not even a neg, it's actually a plus, because you can get more free bodies on the field, or you can get other cards in your graveyard. So yeah, this card is amazing. And all those monsters mean that cards like Plague Spreader and Mad Mauler give you more options, and so the deck has a lot more tools to work with in order to win games, aside from using just Balrog and other cards. Now, we do play some more synchro monsters. The first one is, of course, Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon. Now, this card, in any type of deck that requires milling, it's an amazing level 8 you can make, not only because it's going to give you a card in your hand while mill 4, but it's also a monster that you can bring back sometimes, and the effect to bring it back is not going to come up as often as you'd think, just because it requires to banish a light and a dark monster, so it's not very easy to get to, but there is one light monster you can banish, and that's the Felgrand, because for some reason it's light, so there will be some scenarios where this card can revive itself as well. It's not going to happen as often as in a Dragon Link deck, of course, but you don't really care too much about its revival effect. It's an added benefit. What you really want with this card is to make it, then make the mill, and then bring back either Mad Mauler or your Plague Sparer, and make the one copy of Baron de Flor we have here, because we all know how broken Baron de Flor is. Not only is she going to pop a card, she's going to negate, and she's also going to give you an extended play during the next turn, because you're going to put her back to bring back a monster like Unizombie, and do the same thing all over again. And the last synchro monster we play is one copy of Psychic and Punisher, and this card is amazing. This card basically gives the game a good level 11 synchro monster, because before this card, the only level 11 synchro monster we had was like Star Eater, which was outdated by a long shot. It was not a good card, but this card, being a generic level 11 synchro monster, means that in a deck like this, where you can use cards like a Unizombie that has increased its level by 1, and then a level 7 monster like the Algul Mazera, when it's summoned, it reduces its level by 1, so you can make this card, and it's a monster that is actually very hard to deal with. So what this card does is that while you have less life points on your opponents, it's unaffected by your opponent's effects, and also once per turn you can pay 1000 life points to target a monster you control and one card your opponent controls, banish them, and at the start of the battle phase you can make this card gain attack equal to the difference between yours and your opponent's life points, so it becomes bigger, it's unaffected by card effects, and it also is spot removal. So yeah, this card is really good, and it's a card that even if a deck does not make it as consistently as you would think, it's an option that you can consider right now, just because there are a lot of decks that even playing cards like Emergency Teleport with a Ghost Ogre can make a level 11 synchro monster, and yes, this card now will always be there as the free option. The only exist we play in the deck is one copy of the Zombie Vampire, and the reason we're playing this card is because of its first effect, because you can summon it by treating as a monster you stole from your opponent as a level 8 monster, and with a card like Jacobolan, this effect is not very difficult to use, so you would never really want to use two of your own level 8 monsters to make this card, because in order to do that you would either have to use like a Mazera with a Baladrock or something like that, which is not the least likely thing to happen, but most of the time you want to be summoning this by using one of your own Mazeras along with one monster you stole from your opponent with a card like Jacobolan, and this is basically another Chaos Ruler type of card, so this card is untargetable by monsters that are not special summon from the graveyard, and you can detach a material to basically make both players mill 4 cards and then special summon any of those monsters that you milled, so in theory it can help your opponent as well, but let's be real, you're playing a deck that has so many good effects in the graveyard, and you're going to get a monster not just from the cards you milled, but from the cards you milled from your opponent. So for example, even if you're playing against the Flounder matchup, you can basically, if you mill an Apex Avian, you can steal it and have a free interruption on the field. So yeah, this card is a really good, on top of being a 3k beater, so you can basically push for game with this. For the fusion monsters, we play of course only super poly targets. The first card is Draco Necro Nethersoul Dragon. This is a monster you're going to be summoning with super poly when you have Zombie World on the field, because it requires 2 zombie monsters in order to make, but you also can now play more generic fusion monsters, like one copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon to go against into dark decks, one copy of Dragostapelia, mainly for Brand Despia matchup, which is going to be the matchup you're going to be seeing for the most in the following format, and one copy of Madragon, because there will be some matchups where this card is going to come up, so it's nice to have it just in that case. For the Link monsters, we have one copy of Linkuriboh. Being able to link away Bloom and get its effect on free will is very important, because this card can basically turn Bloom into a normal summon as well, because for example, if you have Zombie World Bloom in your hand, you can activate Zombie World, make Bloom, and then make this, and then summon a Baladrock from your deck, which is the bare minimum, but at least it's something you can do, and this card enables that, so why not play it? We play one copy of Hulky Fibrax. Now, this card, I played mainly to get access into a card like Mad Mauler or Plague Spitter, then make Appaloosa, and then bring back the tuners in order to go into synchros, so you don't really need to play a card like Formula Synchro in the extra deck in order to make more use of it, because it's not going to stay on the field. If it stays on the field, you can get Immortal Dragon on the field with its effect because it's a tuner. It's not something that will happen too often, but there is a target that you would play regardless, so I don't feel like playing Formula in the deck makes much sense, because if you keep this card on the field, then something went wrong, because you want to be able to go into Appaloosa, then go into Baladrock, so you can get more negates on the field. So yeah, this card is mainly to get Mad Mauler and Plague Spitter out of the deck, and then link it away for more cards. We play one copy of Dark the Dark Charmer. This card is very easy to summon in the deck, because we do play a lot of Darks. Now, this card lost a lot of value with a ban list, because the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is not going to be as relevant as it used to be, because if people want to play it now, they won't see it every single game, because we don't have Anaconda, so they would have to rely on hard drawing one of the 2 copies of Fusion Destiny, but still, even without DP being so relevant, the Dark attribute is so generic that you can steal a lot of good monsters from your opponent's graveyard with this card, so in a deck that can make it so easily as this one, you might as well play it. And the last linked monster we play is one copy of Appaloosa, because with Needle Fiber, she's very easy to summon, and with cards like Mazera and Spirit Dao, she's easier to summon than before because you get too many bodies on the field very quickly, so making this, even with 4 interruptions, sometimes can be very easy, and get Ballad Rocks on the field on top of this card. If you combine this with cards like Super Polar Rivalry as well, then you have a formidable board that your opponent will not be able to deal with. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Zombies have evolved once again, and I'm pretty sure that this is not going to be the last time that we get really good support for the deck. So yeah, every time we get new cards, we're going to use them, and this card in the correct format, it can counter so many good decks with Zombie World and all the other decks that it can play, which if you're a fan of the deck, you're always going to find success with the deck and a hell of a time as well. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.